I hate the term thought leader so much, but yeah, because anyone can do it.
It's another pejorative term, isn't it? You're an immigrant of what? Technology. And this is why I write the books, because there's a lot about, the kids are doing this, the kids are doing that. And I'm like, no, they're fucking not. It's not what they're telling me in practice. It's not what I'm dealing with. And if I'm perfect, then you'll love me, Daddy, won't you? You'll love me, Mummy. Will often say to my children, I am sorry for not knowing what I know now, but I can't go back and fix it. So what's the black coffee about?
Well, I started seeing someone, and she's Turkish, and she drinks proper coffee. So now I'm drinking real coffee, and I can't. I was on Nescafe, like, you know, the posh Nescafe. I've been on that, and I've loved it for like years. And now she's showing me real coffee, and I'm like, oh, it's rubbish.
See, I was going to say, this is so interesting, isn't it? Coffee is an artwork around the world, but certainly, see, I'm just challenged by words like proper. Proper in what sense? And also, is that because the world at the moment is, and even if I think back to when I did the TEDx, in terms of conversations that people have around, these are the toxins of the world and they're white and blah, blah, blah. And one of them includes milk. I am a raw milk drinker.
Raw milk is in what sense? Like whole
it's
milk?
Not pasture. It's straight out of the cow and straight into a bottle, and then I buy it.
Is that whole milk or is that pasteurized as well?
Neither. Straight out of the cow.
Oh.
Into bottles, and it doesn't go through the pasteurization process. It's got all of the microbes, it's got all of the
vitamins and everything. It's all in there.
Yeah. And to be perfectly honest, there are two kinds of people that I would say that go to buy raw milk. One of them is kind of the hippie generation, which is apparently where I sit, allegedly. And then there are many, many Muslims that go and buy the raw milk.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, the health benefits are they're considered. You do have to think about it because it contains live bacteria, so you have to think about what you're doing in terms of drinking something that hasn't been pasteurized. But at the same time, the farm that I get it from, they have cows that are untreated with growth hormones and things like that.
I was about to say, as long as the cow is healthy and well looked after, you don't have to worry about what it's passing through to you.
Yeah, this is my functional health stuff. So, one of the bakers that used to be up at the farm shop, he used to use their milk to create the butter, and then the butter would be used in the baking, and it's a very kind of small, self-sustaining little environment.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
What's it like? Is it just thick? Does it taste thicker and
now
creamier?
You see, I'm going to share my age here, aren't I, by saying when I was little and we used to have the milk in the schools in those tiny little bottles, I would certainly say there is. Do you remember the like the cream that used to sit on the top of the bottle?
Yeah.
Right. It's like that, but mixed in, so it's got a more creamy taste.
Oh, okay.
Even though I have the semi-skim just for the just to reduce some of the fat factor, really. That's all. That's all.
I might try it now. I wouldn't try anything that comes out of a goat, but I think everything that comes out of a goat should stay in a goat. But yeah, I'd try that, to be fair.
Which is really interesting because it's probably goat's milk that we first drank as a species, anyway.
Yeah, but
not cow. And I don't even want to go down.
About that.
Yeah, I don't even want to go down the lane of who decided to find out. Let's just leave that there.
No.
Images. No.
Whoever thought? I mean, you could say the same thing, right? It's like whoever thought of getting that out of an animal, and then I don't know what the process is for cheese, but getting it to the point of cheese and having mold grow over it and go, God, that tastes amazing. Try some of that.
Yeah, but I'm full of these amazing facts which I share with my clients sometimes, and I say yes, but if you look across the whole of the animal kingdom, elephants and some other animals, but elephants particularly go out looking for fermented food to get pissed.
Wait, what? Well, like koalas, they get high all the time, don't they?
Well, allegedly so, but I mean, I sit there and I just think, who decided or found out that we could do this thing? Like, who folded their eyelids back one time and went, "Whoa, look, that's a cool trick"? Or, who was so bored they decided to swallow a sword or an umbrella?
Oh God, yeah, the ones where they can put the sword down Oh, no. Oh my god, elephants getting drunk. It's at the top of my list.
Yeah. And they actively seek out fermented foods, so they know in terms of their intelligence what it does.
So there's initial calculation trying to disprove the myth, but then there's a discovery that's reopened the debate, suggesting elephants could potentially be consuming fermented marula fruits and experiencing intoxication. Huh. Good on the elephants, fair play.
Yep.
I can't believe them.
And a fascinating, I mean, this will take us into our conversation, actually. Bonobo monkeys, dolphins, and, I've just forgotten. So it's particularly bonobo monkeys, dolphins. They're the only other animals that have sex for pleasure.
Yeah, dolphins are as horny as hell, aren't they? Like, they're really, really, really horny. Jesus. Yeah. Fair play to the dolphins, though. Yeah, that's fair. I get it. It's okay. Understand it. I mean, well, before we dive in, this is a really positive angle of diving into it. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time, honestly. And we've only met once before for like an hour, and it was I was really just chuffed and blown away. So I'm super happy to have you here, and I know you're really busy. But just introduce yourself very briefly, and then we'll jump in.
So I'm Cath. I am. And I'm not going to go with the big titles. I'm a human being, okay? So I get things wrong. I don't always get it perfect. I'm a parent who had a career of pre-training as a therapist and then post-training as a therapist. You do not want to know about the parent that was pre-therapy training, which is now the household joke about, yeah, remember when you did blah, blah, blah. But that's because I had a military upbringing. So there was a lot of this is how it is, we follow the rules, strict.
Yeah.
And now I do things differently. So given the fact that I started my therapy training, where I've evolved into was, in my past I have been a sex education teacher. Well, not really sex education, it was more about relationships and sex education, because I thought the sex education stuff was not hooey, but the kids kind of know in terms of a lot of the conversations. And what we were doing was pretty much abstinence model, teach them how STIs are going to absolutely be the worst thing ever to them, and that there's no way to treat anything, and that this is the bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, what we didn't talk about was relationships, pleasure, consent. It really didn't get in. Yeah. It didn't get into the conversation with young people. But because I used to be a football teacher and a martial arts instructor, I kind of knew when I was talking to the kids that it wasn't about teenage pregnancy stats. It was about what happens when you become pregnant as a teenager, and what do you think that does to your life? And let's have a look at how much pressure that might cause. And anyway, then I went off to train as a therapist, because in my background, so this is pre-therapy, I was first woman to do my trade in the army. So I'm an optronics engineer, if you like, which means that I'm a mechanical, electrical and electronic engineer, precision engineer. And I used to fix day sights, night sights, lasers, laser power supply units, theodolites, just basically anything that helped us aim at the enemy, which isn't a really nice job, but at the same time, it was a fun job. And then got married, got divorced, and pretty much decided to take a reroute and went to study counselling, psychotherapy, psychology. And since about 2006, I have been in education of some sort or another. So I am just coming to the end of my PhD, and I am a child and adult trauma psychotherapist. So when I'm working with the adults, it's generally dealing with the childhood trauma, even though I'm working with the grown-up. And pretty much my career took me straight into the world of child sexual abuse, kind of the things that were parallel to technology. So I have been in the technology environment, but it's really boring because it's more about data protection, cybersecurity, the early days of IT. And I would go from fixing computers first line all the way through to third line. I'd be in casinos, petrol stations, people's houses, banks, you name it. It was varied, but I decided that I wanted to work with people. And what actually happened is I have a foot in the world of peopling, and I can't get away from the technology stuff. So even when I was doing the relationships and sex education stuff, I'd be talking to kids about their behaviours online, and I'd be saying things like, how many of you accept randomers? And being really surprised at the numbers that did, even though the education system said that they were teaching children all about e-safety and that they weren't doing this. I had contradictory findings from going into a large number of schools, which included public, private, primary, secondary, lots of different ages, and finding the same things again and again and again.
Yeah.
And that's led to a career in really authoring books around the topic, and I am currently writing my 7th book.
I haven't even read that many books in my life.
Oh, now you see, I'm an avid reader because some of them I actually take in through Audible.
Okay.
Because I do it. I'll do it through Audible whilst I'm pottering around, because if it interests me in Audible, then I'll go and buy the print copy.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. So it's like a test understanding. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Well, which one should I read first? Just asking.
So I did a very, very quick, practitioner's guide that's on Kindle.
Okay.
And that was called The Darker Side of the Internet. So that's cyber trauma, the darker side of the internet. It was really my first musings at more than a blog, and sticking it into a format where people could learn a little bit about human behaviour and why we do things. But if you go to Routledge, you will find that there's an initial book, which is kind of the blue one behind me here, which is called Children, Technology and Healthy Development. It ain't about children all the way.
Yeah.
Because I discuss my 55-year-old client and the reason he was doing particular things. I discuss the 76-year-old lady I worked with who was really not having a great time of her later years, and would basically be scrolling things that were kind of in the news and didn't really make her feel good. So one of the things I helped her with was finding a feed that meant that she woke up to a little bit of sunshine every day.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, funnily enough, I'm having the same issue. Traveling a lot of trains recently, going Edinburgh back and forth, and I have this habit of I have these finger habits where on my laptop I'll ever hit Command T to open a search tab, and then hit N, and then it will take me to the news, which is just depressing. And I hit Enter, and it's just habits. So I'll be doing something, and then I'll be like, quick break in my brain, flip the switch. And I'm like, oh, this is depressing. Or I'll just hit X on my phone, and then I'll have just loads and loads of rubbish. And it's just, I hate this so much. And I know you can tweak the algorithm, but it's just, I'm starting to read books instead. I'm just reading books because it's... So,
I mean, my latest book that's out, not the one that I'm submitting the manuscript for at the minute, is the one that I call the Yellow Book, and that's actually appropriately titled How to Manage Your Social Media and Gaming Habits. So there we are, Adam. That would be the one that I would say go and read that, because you'll understand why you do that. And one of the things you've referred to there is automatic behaviour, automatic behaviour. Yeah. And this is one of the things that I'm going to say is I do not use the word addiction. I've just argued with the whole point of the process of addiction, which I address in the first book, but I'm certainly saying this is why it's not addiction. It's a habit that has become automatic, and it's only when you start to read it that awareness clicks in and you go, oh, I'm here again.
Yeah, and addiction's kind of... Forgive me, because I thought I was addicted to stuff. And maybe there's some merit to it in certain context, but there's a lot of people that use addiction as an excuse to not break bad habits. So I have people in my life that they say, for instance, oh, my dad was addicted to alcohol, so I'm automatically more susceptible to being addicted to alcohol. And then that's just a platform then for the behaviour to... Yeah, it's
both disempowering, because an addict, she says, doing the air quotes, the addict can't help it.
Yes.
But actually, there is some truth to hereditary aspects of behaviours that your parents engaged in. However, this is where I go, however, environment and upbringing and access and availability and choices. No, I'm going to kind of not take that word. I'm going to remove that word choices. We actually do things out of habit, and perhaps if you are a person who drinks alcohol, what you will find is once you've had 1, 2 or 3 drinks of alcohol, your inhibition changes somewhat.
Yes.
And addiction is entirely complicated. It's often seen as a biopsychosocial model.
What does that mean?
So I'm going to tell you that in just a second, because I am now positing in the world that we're in, and this applies to the digital stuff, we actually have a cyber biopsychosocial model. So biopsychosocial means it's in biology, i.e. your genetics. So to give you a simple analogy from my functional health world, we have DNA, which is the blueprint as to what your body does with that DNA. So if you think of, and this is something that listeners and viewers and people can think about. If you think about a house and I say to you, draw a house, your house will be different to my house. But the blueprint of our house is pretty much the same. There has to be walls, there has to be a roof, and there has to be a foundation.
Windows and doors, yeah.
Now, you see, isn't that interesting? Because people who don't live in the Western world wouldn't necessarily draw it in that particular way.
Yeah, that's very true, yeah.
So right the way around the world, the concept of a house or home is different, but the blueprint is still the same, if that makes sense. Yeah?
Yeah, the Romans had bricks, the Celts had straw huts. Yeah.
And yet the word house or home is probably understood around the world in terms of what, I mean, it might not even be called a house or home, but the blueprint is there.
The meaning is there, yeah.
Yep. So at the point of conception, the cells begin to divide into a human being. And that blueprint is the same the world round. And sometimes there are errors of copying. So that's called transcription. So when the DNA is copied, sometimes there are errors. And sometimes there are things that happen that mean the errors are more likely. So that's what we call reading the DNA. And this is the world of epigenetics. So what you would find is where the DNA should have read a base pair, it either puts in a particular change or it misses what it should have read and it misreads it. Those are known as single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs. Those SNPs, that's it shortened down, SNPs. Those SNPs you can actually use technology to test for, and it's the epigenetics that are affected by the environment. They are either turned on or off by the environment, and that can include what goes in your body, what you're exposed to, what you're breathing, what you're reading, and so on and so forth. There we are. We've gone right sciencey, right?
No, I like it. It's good. It's good. We're only 17 minutes in. This is very interesting. This one's actually moving really fast for me. It's really intriguing. Okay, so for dumbasses like me, bring it back. So simply put, how does that fall into some of the people I know in my life doing these silly
okay, so the word addiction is overused, misunderstood, and over-applied, right? And what I mean by that is we use the word addicted when we don't mean the psychopathological issue. So going back to the biopsychosocial, I've just talked about the biology. You can have a genetic SNP, you can have a hereditary base pair that comes down. Let's keep it simple, Cath. That means the likelihood is that you will have a particular reaction to a particular substance that you take on board.
Yes, yeah.
The social side of it is, let's think of, I don't know, maybe the Himba tribe out in Africa. They don't necessarily have access to the latest version of the Alco Pops down at the local store. So they're not going to drink alcohol in the same way that a Western civilization would. And then you've got the psychological. The psychological is generally what that thing does for you. So what that, in the word addiction usually here, is what does that thing do for me on a psychological level? Now, it also should and does include emotions, but quite often they kind of fall off. The spiritual side kind of falls off. So what we tend to do is say it's a, what do I want to say here? It's kind of like a complete set of circumstances that make one person susceptible in that moment, and what they get from said behaviour, substance, or whatever it is they're doing, means it's more likely that they will then engage in it again in the future.
Oh, okay. So there's loads of variables to take into account, such as, like, for instance, let's say, like, someone likes to go to a bar for a drink. It may not just be the consumption of the alcohol that makes them feel physically better, but then there's the social elements that make them feel more comfortable, and then they make them feel happy, and then they become more familiar with those people, and then draw a comfort box. Okay, get you. Okay, so there's so many variables to play into it that you can't label it as, say, necessarily addiction in one aspect, because it's too complicated a subject unless you truly know the cause of the issue.
Yeah. And it may not be applicable in all circumstances. Therefore, is it an addiction, or is it a behavioural management tool, like a self-soothing tool?
Got you. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because and it draws into, like, let's take alcohol for an example. Like, it draws into so many other things. So, like, I was having a discussion the other day, disagreements were made, but that's fine. Around, like I said, it's kind of like like a butterfly, right? So this analogy, it's really lovely. It's the butterfly flying, and someone put it in a jar, put the lid on. The butterfly kept on hitting up, trying to fly. And then eventually, when they took the lid off, it didn't try and go up anymore, because it thought, I can't get out and go up anymore. So it limited its behaviour. And I just think, well, that happens so much. It's particularly of these people. And
it's known as learned helplessness.
Yeah, it's horrible. I had that for a long time. It's about a year. It was horrible. I just felt like I was crushed because of particular people. And I know that it's good because you can recognize toxic people. But yeah, it was horrible. It was so horrible because you feel helpless, you feel useless. You're not yourself anymore, and it really burdens. Yeah, how can you kind of, like, there's, like, a little bit of help, I guess, for anyone listening that is struggling with that a bit.
So I'll give you books immediately to head towards. Anything to do with Martin Seligman, Barbara Fredrickson. So you're looking at flourishing. I would certainly say Scott Barry Kaufman's Transcend. There's so much in the space of what we call positive psychology. Yeah. And positive psychology is, how do you move beyond where you are? So you might need a bit of grit and determination. So that's the Angela Duckworth stuff. And when you might be considering other people's opinions, because that's a massive kind of weight around people's necks. And that would be, what is his name? I'll come up with his name in just a second. There is a book called The Art of Mastery.
I've heard of that one.
It's a very good book because it's got the acronym about FOPO on it. Oh, that's Michael Gervais. There we are. I knew I'd remember his name. Michael Gervais.
All right. Yeah, I mean, and one thing I found with it is, like, for me, it was about, I kind of found purpose, and there was a combination of events that came into play where things just started to go a little bit right, and I broke myself out of it. That was my experience, and personal beliefs and meeting particular people, and that's how it's worked for me. But it's not I got to say as well, you said about reading books, and some people are going to want an instant solution, right? Like, quick, convenient solution. Like there's some people that think, oh, well, I'll order a tablet online, I'm going to feel better tomorrow, whereas it's not. It's hard work, it's continuous, consistent work, and it's managing, not so much curing, to make yourself a better person in that aspect.
Now, those are the shelf help books. The ones that people often buy, they don't necessarily read front to back and understand and apply, which is, I mean, I'm talking about the kind of Transcend book, because the way that, so often he's called SBK, so not Scott Barry Kaufman, but SBK, the way that he writes about how to transcend beyond actualization, self-actualization, shows that it is a continuous journey. And he takes the Maslow hierarchy, and I'm going to point out on behalf of SBK here, he does not draw a triangle. Let me tell you, he never did draw a triangle, but the world in which people interpret what people say and how they mean it gets kind of designed and described in lots of different ways. And actually what SBK did was he said, actually, let's take that triangle, if it ever did exist, and let's put it on the base of a boat, because actually that is the sail. You can be much, much more than just this triangle of peak of self-actualization. Well, what comes beyond that? Well, self-transcendence does. And it can take you into, I don't know, spaces of integral therapy, or integral therapy, as some people say it, or integral philosophy. There's also certainly work around, and these are like apps you can get. Certainly the work of Rick Hansen and his his books. He is, and he's just gorgeous. He's another gorgeous writer. But there is so much out there in terms of, he's written a book called Resilience. But I mean, if you go all the way back, I quote a lot of Rick Hansen. I quote a lot of Daniel Siegel's SBK. These are kind of all people that I've read around and I admire because of the work they do and the fact that they have also studied in this space for a long time. They're not just knee-jerking social media influencers.
Yeah, they're actual professionals that have spent time and energy studying this.
Yes. Actual professional. Yes, that's a good way of describing it.
Yeah. Because anyone could put. I hate the term thought leader so much. That one really, really bothers me. But yeah, because anyone can do it. But no, that's good. That's good. Okay, no, that's quite cool. I'll take a look at some of them. To be fair,
just go back on the recording and just be like, who was it? Was it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I mean, we're at 25:14, so actually, I'll just mark the clip. There we go. I'll mark the clip so I can go back to this. Yeah, no, that's really cool. And the other thing for me as well was like, I think it depends on a lot of those variables we discussed as well, like even down to your genetics of like, you know, your gender, your sex, where you come from, you know, how you're raised, the culture and everything. For me, it was purpose. It was finding purpose again in what I want to do. And for me, like, I think there's a lot of around like, I genuinely think there's a lot of good and evil in the world, and I think there's a big fight between it a lot. And I think, you know, it's some sides rise and fall, and that depends on how you define it, right, and what side you're on, and you know, if you pick a side. But yeah, doing good is what drives me most, because then hopefully I can build a better world for the kids I hope to have one day with the person I love. And that's my key. So it's very much tribal, but I like it. It works. Yeah. Money doesn't motivate me. It's like not much, to be honest. It's just greed.
Well, you see, you're tapping into, as you were talking then, I was like, I've got more words and more people and more. Certainly in terms of passion and purpose, they are often the things that bring people into therapy. That's why I work with a lot of the adults. And there is somebody called Stephen Kotler who does something called the Passion Recipe. You can go and find that out on YouTube. That is really, really helpful for a lot of people, because, you know, finding your passion, finding your purpose, finding your place in the world, that's 3 P's, that's at least 3 P's there, is something that takes us a long time. And quite often, I'm really thinking the influencer who talks about this a lot is Gary Vaynerchuk. You know, don't think that just because you're 20, you've got to have your passion and purpose already set. No. You can still do it at X age, and that sort of takes you into that space again of kind of the transcend. You can always keep bettering and doing better and improving and changing. Yeah, and you're right. It isn't a quick fix, although there are some quick intervention fixes that you could do for yourself, and I'll point you to a podcast by Jim Quick. His episodes are short and sharp, and he interviews some of the people that I've talked about, and he talks about becoming limitless and managing the way that you apply yourself in the world today, whether that be recalling names, sticking to your word, for example, because that's something that a lot of us don't do either.
I'm bad at it. I'm guilty. You know, who hasn't?
But there is something in terms of what you said, Adam, about intrinsic and extrinsic purpose. And I would certainly say what you're looking for as your purpose and passion in life is maybe something that, so there's a word that's called autotelic. So that's the behaviour we seek, where it becomes something we want to do the following day, because we enjoy it. Yeah. Now, I did say to somebody yesterday, writing, I don't like writing. And her response was, but you're very good at it. And I said, well, I'm good at applying myself to sit down and do what I need to do. Doesn't mean that I enjoy it.
Yeah.
This is what I enjoy, talking to people after reading something, because what's happening at the moment is there's a faster flow of information for me than there is when I'm trying to type and keep up with the fizz buzzes that's going on in my brain and the direction that I really want to write. And
so you know, I have to be in a room with someone talking to them about what we're going to do and then do it at the same time. That flows better for me than sitting on the desk and going, and it's just flat.
Yeah, type in slow. I can't wait for the thing that I just stick on the side. I've watched Black Mirror.
I know. I'm kind of down for sacrificing a part of me for that, because it's just so damn boring. I hate it so much. That's one thing I love about GPT, and Tell Sid, plug it, is that I can just pop in some stuff, speak to it, and go, this is what I want you to do, and then it does it, and I'm like, read it out to me, digest it, go, yeah, cool, send that, done. Like talking to someone. It's not, and I'm broke, so I can't hire many people. I can hire some, but not many. So it's great. It fills that gap. The other thing I was going to say, when you said about doing it, you never stop doing it. Like Judi Dench said something about that. She was talking about how she constantly learns. I love that woman. I hate it when I see people who are like, they say they're past their prime. It doesn't matter if you've peaked at 40 or 30 or 20, whatever. You're still you. You're still doing things. You're still learning things. But the guy who founded KFC, he started when he was, 70? 80? The Kentucky Fried Chicken guy? He sold chicken door to door. And then he, now look at KFC. It's massive. I hate KFC. Personally, I think it's crap. But there's a lot of people who enjoy it. It's massive. And he did that when he was an old man. So,
Yeah. And you know what? For anybody over the age of 50, I'm going to recommend that they go and pick up a book written by one of my colleagues who is almost 80, and it's called Fuck Aging. It is about living the second half of your life, i.e. over the age of 50, and how to do that with passion, purpose, flow. And this came out of, so I met this lady when I was in the Flow, so the Flow Genome Project and the Flow Research Collective are two spaces where the discussion around flow takes place and how we increase the amount of flow we can have in our lives, which is really what I do. If you want to call it a recipe for doing the writing.
I was about to say, can you define flow for me?
So many people will know it as being in the zone.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So flow is actually a channel between complete boredom and something that's effectively too hard for us. So it's often called the 4% channel, right? Now, and it's usually about your skill set and level of what I'm actually going to say here makes it sound like I'm talking about sex when I talk about the level of awareness and the level of challenge that we have, but it's actually to do with arousal levels, okay? But not that kind of arousal. So it's challenge and skills. And what you're really doing is you're looking for this beautiful sweet spot, which is there's enough challenge for it not to be boring, nor too much challenge so that you're wired with anxiety about, I can't do this, this is beyond me.
Then you hit that brick wall.
And, so you're always looking for something. It's like a competition that I do with myself. So when I sit down to write, I tell myself I'm only going to write X number of words or X amount of time. And what I will find is that kind of smart goal of I'm going to do 500 words today. Okay. Often I will sit down and I'm like, right, I've got to get this done. Certainly there's an element of the procrastination monster getting bigger and bigger that helps me do this. But certainly it will be, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write 500 words today. Those 500 words might be drivel, but I follow a particular recipe. I sit down and I have a bit of mindfulness breathing. I will sit and think about what I want to do, and I start editing what I've written before. Because as I'm starting to edit what I've written before, what starts to happen is those concepts start to connect up again and the pattern recognition begins. And then I set off from that point onwards is where my 500 words begin. And quite often I will exceed the 500 words.
Interesting.
Because once you're in the zone, and I'm now starting to sound like I'm teaching around flow, you actually have a sense of timelessness, effortlessness, richlessness, and selflessness. So it feels like it's known as stir. And if you want to understand books on this, you need to read Flow by Csikszentmihalyi. I would certainly go for Stealing Fire by Kotler and Wheel. And again, going back to the names that I mentioned earlier, they're all names that exist within this sector and space around being your best and doing your best.
Got you. Okay.
This has turned out to be an interesting part of the podcast, hasn't it? It started off with health and well-being, and look at where we are now.
Yeah. And no, this is really interesting. Yeah, Waterstones is going to love us. Okay.
Well, I'm all for sharing knowledge. I do it a lot, and I do it for free.
I think my philosophy on that is, and that's why like Sid and shit is free. Sid and shit, but it's because I think if you get knowledge in life and you don't share it, you're stealing it from everyone else. Because everyone's born with nothing, and you learn it from someone else who's given it to you. So it's like a cycle. You should share it. Otherwise, it's theft, really. Because you take from the universe, and you should give back. And if you don't give back, then you're a piece of shit. So
I haven't shared anything yet that doesn't belong to anybody else. I haven't shared which I'm just thinking earlier. I mentioned cyberbio-psychosocial. That's something that I'm suggesting because I haven't seen it shared elsewhere. But everything that we've talked about so far is knowledge I've taken from other people. It's not my knowledge.
Yeah, same. I mean, the words I speak, the clothes I wear, my posture, how I choose my posture to be based on how other people choose to be and what that represents in different situations and climates. So it's all mimicry, and that's great. That's absolutely fine, because then when sharing's caring. I love that, because then everyone actually has something to bond over, other than everyone trying to be unique and special and selfish. Where does that get anybody? Lonely.
I'm so ordinary, Adam. Yeah, I'm so ordinary, Adam, that I'm like everybody else.
Well, there's a special group of people. It depends on the unique identifier and what we're going to compare you against.
Yeah. So, but that uniqueness is generally the I of the self. In terms of now, that's starting to get me. This is not really this is not really where we want to go here. But there's a me and an I and a self and the way that we tend to describe when we're talking to people, because we quite often say I this, me this, mine. And when you start to talk about yourself in that way, that's the individual. But actually, that individual is part of the whole. And this is taking us into kind of the philosophical, metaphysical thinking here, which might be a bit too deep, but also I will probably cock it up at some point in terms of. I'll fluff it at some point, because I don't claim to be an absolute expert in this place. So let's move on.
I don't think anyone is, to be fair. I mean, yeah, it depends on. It's just such too many variables to account for. It's like, for instance, there's a person I know in one industry. They crossed into another. In their industry, they did fantastic. They did really, really well. Very clever. Business model's fantastic. Doing some particular stuff in a different country, and they then crossed into another sector, completely shit all over it. They brought their ego plus their experience, because they grew an ego from the experience, and then they fucked it completely.
No, you see,
and damaged the whole thing. And I was like, you had no idea what you were talking about, even though you're an expert and a thought leader. Waste.
Now, you see, you've mentioned the one word that I see in so many spaces in terms of ego, and there are many different ways to think about this ego. The ego is the self, the ego is part of the self, the ego is the way that we talk about the self, the ego is the self that we want to be. Do you know what I mean? It's...
All right, can I, I'm gonna rephrase that. A toxic, dictatorial ego. Because an ego can be a good thing and a bad thing. Depends on the context and the variables that play, right? Like, for instance, having an ego for self-worth and taking care of yourself and believing that you're good looking and you can find someone, you can care for someone and provide and do all the things you need to do, those are my biases. Then that's a great thing. It's a good ego to have, because it's healthy and you'll look after yourself. But then if you have no ego and you have no self-worth and you are disdaining against yourself and you think you're ugly and, not worth the salt, then that's a bad mindset to have. But this guy just had an ass of an ego.
So I wonder sometimes if we, again, it's one of those words we use, which if we replaced it with attitude, that might feel better, because actually the ego is if you think about people that go and take psychedelics, that dissolves the ego. There is no self, there is no I, there is no way of being. Yeah. And certainly in because there's many disciplines. There's like 237 different ways to do therapy and learn about therapy and human behaviour, that actually I would certainly say that the ego is something I think of in terms of the egogram. It's something that I think of as ego development. It's something that I think of in terms of in transactional analysis, we talk about ego states. There's it's a complicated word that gets used in different ways, and of course psychoanalytical ego is different to what we're talking about, which is people behaving like an arse because they've got an attitude that really puts them front and centre in that dictatorial way that you talked about. But underneath all of it, that's because maybe their development of the self was split and fragmented when they were little, which means that they don't actually have an ego.
Oh.
It's a word. See, what this is like being in therapy in terms of I'm challenging some of the words that you're using, because what you actually described was somebody who thought in a particular way, which was, I am the expert, I'm going to impart my knowledge on you.
Yes.
I think people online would probably say that's the behaviour of being a dick.
Yeah, pretty much at the point. Yeah. Horrible person. Really manipulative and horrible.
Which says to me, extremely insecure, possibly.
Yes. Oh, very
traumatized. Yeah. I mean, I go straight to the why would some. Yeah.
They would take one piece of information that was, say, a minor success, and then use language to inflate it to then become the center of attention, pass off negative opinions on others that may or may not succeed or are doing something to then inflate themselves to then become the posture of the room. And it was so awful. And when this person listens to this, they're going to know exactly who I'm talking about. All I can say is hello.
So what I'll do is I'll give you and other people a little bit of insight. So I meet these children in therapy. I'm the best at football, Cath. Oh, yeah. Because I could not tolerate telling you that I'm shit. I could not tolerate telling you the real truth, which is nobody likes me, nobody wants to play with me. I am completely worthless, useless, unwanted. So what I do is I tell you how good I am at something in the real framing of the word narcissist here, in a way that's egocentric and narcissistic, because I really want you to like me because nobody really does.
It's sad though, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, if they're open and honest about it, I know this person. You can tell who they are deep down. I figured it out. And I just thought, if you just came clean and just said the truth about it and just expressed yourself, I'd give you a cuddle. It'll be fine, you know? It's just
and that's too much, isn't it? That's too much. Because then I would crumble, and then I'd have to accept that I really am not that likeable, and that means that I would then have to kind of do some soul searching. And rather than do that, rather than do that, and the world is, I mean, there's a reason I'm divorced. The world is full of people who cannot deal with what really happened to them in their childhood. And the sad part about this, Adam, actually, and this might take us into what we originally said we'd talk about.
We're only 42 minutes in.
This is one of the reasons why I like being a child therapist, because during that early development, we should have particular needs met. And I'm using a word there which might be perceived as something that we call critical parent language in terms of shoulds. Because actually, our parents should look after us, and I'm doing this in what we call an adult ego state in transactional analysis language. They should look after us, they should care for us, they should love us, but often they don't, often they can't, often there's elements missing, which means that it's too difficult, or they don't know that they can't do something. So often I will say to the parents I work with, or the kids, it's like your grandma learned how to speak a language, and when she taught your parent, you know, your mum in this instance, for the example, she didn't teach her all of the words that existed in that language. So your mum can't teach you all of the words in that language either. Now, that might be in reference to emotional regulation. It might be in reference to empathy or compassion or connection or understanding. It could be any part of the human psyche. And you know, there's a reason I'm a psychotherapist, and I grew up in a family where there were missing, let's call them puzzle pieces, and missing pieces of language, which meant that I then didn't have those skills, the language, the behaviours, the understanding to go out and parent my children in the same way. Like I talked about, before therapy training, I parented like my parents. After therapy training, I parent in the opposite direction. And I will often say to my children, I am sorry for not knowing what I know now, but I can't go back and fix it. What I can do is recognise that I didn't have the tools then that I currently have.
That's fair.
Now, doesn't get me off the hook. Doesn't get me off the hook, Adam.
It doesn't, but at least you can recognise it, and then at least the kid can then see it. Yeah, I know how that kid will feel, to a degree, and again, too many variables. But then at least the kid can recognise that you recognise it, and there's not then a case for the kid to mirror the same kind of stance with no exceptions. Because then you break the cycle, don't you? Of that crap leading down the line.
Yeah, lots of grown-ups that come into my office, when we're talking, I will often really reflect to them, you are now breaking that thread of intergenerational trauma. The fact you are in the therapy office doing the work and recognising that past history means you do not automatically pass it on. Now, I'm going to suggest to people at this point that they go and read the Philip Larkin verse, which is called The Verse. Parents, they fuck you up, they will. They do not mean to, but they do. And they add an extra bit in just for you. That's the beginning of it.
I like that. I'm going to mark
he does advise not to go and have children. I'm going to say, no, don't take that bit of advice, actually, because to quote a very famous singer, children are the future. And actually, one of the things that does happen is this is how we make the changes. We educate our children. The same as, I'll tell you, my children call me an arse at times. Yeah, I remember when you made us tidy to the level of, the fact that the Queen might have been coming round for an inspection. Maybe I did have high standards.
There's an essence of guilt there. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was like, there was all that stuff, and I was upset, parents and shit. But then, like, I think it was around, how old am I now? 26 now. Oh God. I'm halfway through, coming up to my second phase of my life. I spoke to this amazing lady. I only had 2 sessions with her. She was brilliant. She was so damn good. I called her a coach, not a therapist, a coach, because it made me feel more comfortable. Because it's got negative connotations, and also hippies. But I had 2 sessions with her, and I did confront parents about things in the past. I'm not going to express what it is here, and it was difficult stuff. And we had some chats, and what I figured out after like the second session was that some of it is that reinforced trauma behavior that recycles itself. They don't even realize they're doing it because it was done to them as natural. It's like breathing. It's mimicked. It's mirrored behavior and it culminates the exact same or almost similar situations without any realization and no recognition of faults of their own because it's natural, which is insane. But then I recognized that it wasn't all bad. There was good. It's what you choose to remember, because we do. I'm horrible. I will like forget about things completely as if they never happened. I'm like, wait, that happened? Because your brain does. It blocks out really traumatic events. And I want to come on to the word trauma in a minute because I discussed it with another guest in the past. She was brilliant. But then I was like, okay, but they did the best with what they got. They didn't choose to be put in that place by their parents. So then they've tried their best with what they've got, thinking genuinely they're doing the best. And it's not it's not their fault. It's not like putting them down here, but as an example, if you teach a dog to go and fetch and bring the stick back, but then he goes and gets the wrong stick because he's being taught to get a certain type of stick the whole time, you don't bollock the dog. You still praise the dog because the dog tried its best. That's different. The dog still tried and achieved what it thought it could achieve to the best outcome. Otherwise, it's just a bit of a nasty biased mess, and that's emotional bias or whatever. But it's so I'd say they've done the best of what they can, and then I can recognise that and take that on board and do the best of what I can, and recognise where they went wrong, and also just look at myself and go, oh, I'm doing wrong here, and here's why, and do something different. And that's hard because you develop habits based off of the behaviors you've experienced, and you mirror that. So it's, yeah. But I think the word trauma, like addiction, is overused and satirized in certain contexts, and it puts people off of using the word or listening to people discussing the word, which then just kind of destroys all this progress of what we're actually discussing here, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, fuck 'em.
Yeah. It's an interesting word. It's a bit of the word du jour at the moment, isn't it? It's a buzzword, and I usually play what I call buzzword bingo. Trauma informed is the buzzword of today. It used to be resilience. Then it used to be resilience, but now we talk about trauma informed. I'm trauma informed, and I say great. That's like being weather informed. Good for you.
Sorry. What's trauma informed? I'm going to mute myself while I choke.
So trauma informed. Well, it's a movement that's taking place based on the idea. Now, this is really what we're like as a species. So, in 1998, there was a piece of research done that is now being thrown around and often bashing people on the heads with it, actually, which was known as the Adverse Childhood Experiences research, the ACEs study. There's nothing ACE about it at all. But that was actually done in a medical setting, trying to understand why the high levels of comorbid diseases were presenting in a lot of the people in a particular part of America. Actually, the word trauma goes back many bloody years. Oh God, I sound like I'm doing one of those police academy things there. Many. You're not even old enough to remember that. But
you see, it's fine, so no one's going to know you shouldn't have mentioned it.
I just find it funny that sometimes I talk in TV shows or song lyrics or something like that. There's just things that stick with you forever.
That's right. I've been told I'm a cartoon character sometimes because I do shit that's just so stupid. But we'll move on.
So the word trauma has existed for a long time. It exists in lots of different places. So in medical settings, it means to have a particular wound of a particular depth that loses a particular amount of blood, or there's a particular amount of blood loss, or there's a department that deals with specific things that happen to the body that are trauma. But in the words of Bessel van der Kolk, who is uniquely placed because he has one of the worldwide best-selling books called The Body Keeps the Score, he describes trauma as an event that is overwhelming and you're powerless and helpless and effectively nobody is there to help you. And Gabor Mate's got his own reflection on the word trauma. And yet there are many psychotherapists and psychologists and people who were working with clients, customers, patients, whatever we want to call them, a long time ago. And what they would talk about is the fragmentation of the self and something that occurs that is beyond belief. And everybody has their own definition of it. And you're right, in terms of the world is saturated with this word trauma, and not everything is a trauma. Sometimes it is an event that's challenging. Sometimes it's an event that is difficult. And what I tend to see is people will talk about trauma as though, you know, the latest pair of shoes are not in Deichmann and oh my God, it was so traumatic and I'm just so addicted to buying shoes. And what we tend to do is take pathological language, use it in everyday settings. And the world is full of therapy speak right now. Oh, I understand trauma because this thing happened to me and it was so traumatic and really what happened was. But in the same way, what often happens for a lot of people is they don't recognise trauma. So it's not a case of people coming forward and saying this thing happened and blah, blah, blah. I would say in nearly every client I have ever worked with, if they are describing something, they don't always call it trauma. They will call it this thing, it, that. Okay? So it's unnamed, but named. Okay?
Gotcha. Yes.
And quite often they are talking about something that I will go, wow, ouch. And sometimes people will look at me, why did you say that, Cath? You know, I was called, and I'll give you an example of one of the things that often gets said to kids. Let's go with, oh, that's it. I'm doing my best. Well, your best is not good enough. Oh, ouch. That's harsh. might not necessarily be classified as a trauma.
Mm.
However, if that destroys that child's self-esteem in that moment, and they then begin to suffer with depression or anxiety around not feeling good enough in the world, and actually that parent was overbearing, 7'4", and I don't know, carrying a cricket bat or whatever it is, that's different to just the sentence said on its own. Okay? So the context, the event, how it's recalled, what it means, the story the client tells themselves, what happened afterwards. Well, now we start to move into the Gabor Mate thing of an event happened to me and the story I told myself afterwards was, and it's generally about being powerless, helpless, alone, isolated and overwhelmed.
Yeah. No, I get this. Because then, I understand. And it also depends on, like, and those things inform what the level of resilience is to trauma in the future, right? So, for instance, I spoke to a lady who's another cool lady who's a friend. I haven't spoken to her in ages. I'm walking down the street and she goes, "Oh, Adam, I couldn't do what you do. You just got too much on. It's too stressful. It's ridiculous." And I was like, "Yeah, no, but to me, it's fine, right? Because I do it day in, day out. So I have a level of resilience built up to that.
Yeah.
Right? And if something happens to me, for instance, like, I don't know, financial mess, lose your home, for me, it was like, okay, what's next? Move on. Shelve that. Park it away. What comes on next? It was difficult, but you get out of it, the hole, right? You're in a hole, you just dig yourself out again. For someone else, it's like, end my life. Take my own life. Quite literally. Because there's no escape. It's horrible. It's the end of the world. The resilience bar just isn't as high. And I get that makes sense. And also, I mean, if it's say your dad, right? I mean, I'm going to speak from personal example here. Like, if it's my dad and I was like 4 and I did my best and I put everything into it and I thought, this is the best I could possibly do and this meant everything, and I thought in his eyes this is the golden goose to get approval. He was a great dad, by the way. And he turned around to me and went, "You're such a disappointment. What the fuck was that? Wait till you get home." That would be soul destroying. Yep. I'd probably have forgotten it, and that would be horrible. It would be a horrible moment. And that would stay with me for the rest of my life, whether I remembered it or not. And I'm sure there's a lot of bands out there, and a lot of people out there are going to recall something like that.
Yeah.
And it's,
So the kind of trauma that I spend most of my time working with as a clinician is the kind of stuff that happens, and I'm going to say this is without blame, this following sentence is without blame, is often where there is what we call fetal damage or fetal fetal as in the womb.
Yes.
So there is a particular, and it is a disorder. I am well aware of the language that I'm using is quite pejorative in terms of I don't like the word disorder, but also it's an explanation. It's not the understanding. It's an explanation of what we do to categorize something. Okay. So I know quite often in the space of therapy, people will say, "I need a label, I want a label," and that label can be the descriptor, but it doesn't give you the understanding of what that means for that person, okay? So I work a lot with children who are born to substance dependent or substance misusing mums, and those issues and disorders can present as the way that the body develops in the womb, in utero. And depending on when substances are ingested or when they are possibly exposed to them, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman drinking alcohol or taking drugs. They might be in an environment where there's an earthquake or there's domestic abuse, and it's not always, and this is why I'm saying it's kind of not an attack and it's not a pathologizing statement. There is often in that process of development stuff that happens that affects the way the baby develops. Okay, so a lot of these babies that I work with have what we call developmental trauma, and that developmental trauma began in utero. I also work with a lot of children who have developmental trauma before the age of 7, which means that they cannot necessarily recall it in the way that you were talking about there at the age of 4, That memory might not be something that you can use words to verbalise, but it is a feeling that you know, and that's to do with the way that their memory works. So I'm generally working with babies. I'm generally working with under 7s who have been exposed to particular events that we definitely 100% classify as traumatic. And that's because there has been physical, psychological or emotional damage on a level that is not just about a one-time sentence that was said to that child. So often it is sexual abuse, often it is physical abuse, and often it is abuse of other kinds that I've talked about in terms of development of the child. And what happens in developmental trauma is one of the domains of development is often impacted. So that could be social development, intelligent development, that might be cognitive, it might be physical development. So a lot of the children who have been born to alcohol dependent mothers generally have distorted facial features, or the way that the brain develops means that they don't have the coordination that other children have. They sometimes have physical disabilities, and so on and so on and so on.
Oh, bless. Yeah.
So as you can see, there is trauma, but there's also developmental trauma, and this is really where Bessel van der Kolk came in, because that diagnosis is not in the diagnostic manuals, but it is a well-respected term that is used particularly for children under the age of 7.
See, this sort of stuff just breaks my heart.
And it happens so often, Adam.
Yeah.
It's really the thing that makes me do my job, in terms of the numbers of children that I can help is limited to the numbers of client hours I can do in a week. But actually conversations like this, and where I go out teaching, where I support organisations around CSAM, so that's child sexual abuse material, that kind of stuff, I get to really make a difference from the top down. It kind of trickles down, whereas working with clients, I can only really see a maximum of, I don't know, about 20 a week. I don't see 20 a week, because that would maximize my level of tolerance to,
you can, as a human being with a soul and a brain that's not, completely cold, there's only so much you can take before you crack. And you have to look after yourself in order to do that. Otherwise, you can't help anyone.
Well, that is something that I do spend. I mean, that's why we started talking on the functional health and the health and well-being right at the outset of this, is because my health is really what allows me to do my job. So I have learned over the years how many clients to have as a maximum, how many clients I can hold in mind at one time, how many stories I can manage, because we're talking about lifelong trauma for a lot of the children that I work with that are sexually abused, and where it's recorded and uploaded, or where they've shared something that then comes back. That kind of trauma is the one that I'm trying to educate people around at the moment, because it's not like any of the other traumas that I spoke about earlier. In terms of, loads of literature exists about in utero trauma, loads of literature exists about being in a war zone, being in an earthquake, being here, being there, having that exists. But for 28 years, we haven't developed enough literature to understand the lifelong impact of something that I call cyber trauma.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of lacking information. There's a lot of published. There's a lot of data that's not published around this as well, right? Right from the source of the people that are hosting these little platforms that don't want it to be heard. But yeah, I mean, we've kind of adapted to a new way of life, right? Where we're not actually, for the moment, fingers crossed, we're not going at each other with rifles and swords. We're not trying to kill each other on a daily basis. The battle of life is so much waking up, getting to work, dealing with your bad habits, forming relationships, communicating. Those are the war zones for, say, the United Kingdom, the West right now and we're seeing the wars. They're interesting because they can be directed by so many different third parties as well, and influences everywhere. For instance, like let's say, a geopolitical adversary leveraging social media to push a certain narrative into a certain demographic to then cause spite between another. And then people stop communicating because they feel divisions between themselves or anticipation of divisions, and then they can't have a discussion around something wholly and truly understand it and break down the molds that are being built. It's fucking fascinating.
Well, that's starting to take you into that cyber biopsychosocial model that I was talking about earlier. We now exist in a place that has cyber synapses, which is the reason I called my podcast that in many, many years ago. But also there is this thing about we now exist temporally, so this is like time-wise, we exist in terms of the last 28 years, the hive mind, as it's often called, it exists, and we do not live in just the corporeal world. So that's the real world for people who don't know what that word means.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think there's a lot of adaptation that needs to be done on the psychological level and also the biological level, because I hate it. Personally, I'm not... there's a lot of benefits to it. It's great. You learn so much. I mean, I would not be... I know a lot of stuff, and I find it really fascinating. I just love learning, and I love learning about particular things I'm interested in. But, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation without it, which means I'm learning a ton of stuff right now that I wouldn't want to pick up a book and read it because it's boring. But with this, I can have that conversation, and I don't know where the hell you are. But I'm in the country in Southwest, and I can, after this call and another meeting, I can then go outside and go for a walk and just switch off and just enjoy my own brain without any input from anybody else. And it's lovely. And I can watch the birds like an old man and really enjoy it.
Yep. That's nice. Really... let's double click on that. Gratitude. Let me tell you, gratitude is an underdeveloped skill in many people. And you know what? Right. We would do well to have gratitude breaks throughout the day.
God, tell me about it. I get this. So it's on the train. I take a lot of train journeys. And I'll sit there and I'll just stare out the window. And I'm just really enjoying the view. Because you never know when you're not going to have one again. That's a big part of my life is I don't know when I'm going to die, or I don't know when someone I love is going to be gone forever and I can never say something again. So I appreciate them as much as possible, even though I'm human and I slip sometimes and I say something fucking stupid. The main goal, like 90% of it, is to have those moments specially spended. And I look out the window, and instead of being on my phone like watching some twat on YouTube do something, I'd rather stare at the sun and be like, well, apart from kizzling my eyes.
Maybe not directly at it. Just to the side.
I'd see a sheep, right? Or I'd see a deer jump out of a bush that no one else saw, and I'm like, I love that deer. That's a beautiful deer. That's so gorgeous. And you just enjoy the beauty, admire it. Or you see someone do something really stupid, right? I was on the train yesterday, and my missus travelled way too many hours, and she was absolutely shattered. And I looked down, I heard... And I was like, the fuck is that? And I leaned down, and it was a dog looking at my bowl. And it just cracked me up. And he's just licking for like, I don't know, probably 10 minutes, just sucking up tons of water. And I was just like, that's a pretty nice moment. That dog's incredibly happy right now, and it sounds absolutely disgusting, but it's brilliant.
Yeah. It's the only time that it's funny this, isn't it, right? So there is for some people they can have a particular reaction to sounds that other people make. But isn't it funny how the ASMR world online has now included all of the munchy crunchy sounds that animals make, and apparently they're fine.
Yeah, it's funny when it's a dog doing it, but when I hear a woman or a man do it, it's particularly... I'm biased. I prefer to listen to a woman's voice over a man's voice, but I don't do ASMR very much, and I know a lot of people don't like to admit that, which is strange because you're interested in what you're interested in. But the sounds of people chewing and eating, it makes me want to rip my ears out. Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it very much. Do you like it? I don't like it.
It's one of those. I was just going to say, it's one of those things I've had to get used to because the children in the clinic, I mean, they sometimes eat the Play-Doh, the sand, they come in eating their sandwiches. I had to get over myself with it.
I suppose so, yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was little, we were sitting down at Christmas dinner once, and my brother was just like going to kill someone because all he could hear was we were spending time with another family, and they ate with their mouths open, and we were all taught to eat with our mouths closed. And
now you see, that's probably something to do with it. Not that I'm going to do therapy with you, but that's probably something to do with the dislike around it. There's very few people who have a biological like intrinsic response to it. A lot of it is about it's disgusting because, and then fill in the sentence for yourself. Yeah, correct.
Manners and politeness. It's like you'd see those kids run around the playground. They had food at the side of the face, and I was like, I never had food at the side of my face. And if someone said it, I'd be like, because I was taught to be, present yourself respectfully and clean and be polite. And I swear all the time, but don't have food at your face, man.
Aren't childhoods interesting? I'll just say that.
So interesting. Build
so
the foundation,
you can use you can use foul language and say words that are vulgar, but you can't have food around your mouth.
Yeah, I swore my head off as a kid. I mean, my dad used to swear a lot, so I swore a lot, and that was it, And yeah, and I used to do it in school a lot, but when I'd come home, he's a northerner, so I'd get a smack, and that was it, and it was. Don't do it, Alan. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. Okay.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, just to give you the way that the brain works in the real world is exactly what you've talked about there. It's a word, and some of these words are palatable. Oh my goodness. Some of these words, there is a particular word. Okay. Let's just go into this swear space, right? There is a particular word uttered that begins with C that can make people go, oh, and isn't it interesting? It's probably one of the most powerful words that an English person can use to call somebody something. And generally, we put another word with it. Like we'll say, oh, you utter.
Yeah, and actually it's crazy because descriptively in the dictionary it describes one of the most beautiful things. So, we all come out of one. That's nuts. Well, most of us.
Yeah, and I'm not doing bad. I'm not doing bad in terms of not swearing because having been in the military, the word "fuck" is used like a comma.
Oh yeah, no, fucking right. I love it. I love that word so much. Also, shit. I love it because in the English language we say it as I don't know if adjective is the right word, but we use it as to define many things, including good things and bad things. So, for instance, if you don't like profanity, just pause it and skip by like a minute. It's like good shit. Oh, that's bad shit. That's terrible shit. That's fucking amazing shit. Oh god, I love that shit. Great shit. We just do it, and it's contextually based shit, and that's how it works. And I think that's like there, and there. Contextually based language, even how it's spelled. So I think we're a very contextualized language, and I think that a lot of people online who aren't English or don't derive from the culture misunderstand that, and I think that's where a lot of barriers in text language break down.
Yeah. And also one of the things that I would say that children learn very quickly is how to inhibit that particular part of your brain. So what you actually spend most of the day doing is going, no, it's not appropriate to say that word in that sentence here, for example, in front of a teacher, and yet you would say it in front of your friends out on the way home, but the moment you hit the front door, your brain then goes, okay, inhibit from this point on, which is why we make the mistakes, because sometimes that part of the brain isn't in full gear. And I find it incredibly funny when, and it happens so often, when one of the clients drops something in the room and they forget where they are just for that moment.
Yeah. I did it in front of my mum once. I think I was about 17 at this point, and I was swearing all the time. And then we walked along and I turned around and I said, fuck, or something like that. And I put my hand on my mouth and I went bright red. And she was like, just laughing at me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, why am I doing that? That's so weird." But it's my mum, it's strange.
And I would say to all all of the people that say that they don't swear or whatever, drop it. Well, I'm not saying drop a hammer on your toe, but do something that causes you pain, and that's the first. I always say it's like the lid on a box. That's the first thing to come out. It's the first access point.
Yeah, they're full of shit. I'm sorry, but everyone swears at some point. Even you gotta be really. Some people have again, down to resilience, they have a trigger point that's much further afield than most. I respect that. Good on you for self-control. But, we're all human. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
Or something in our context of our minds that means a similar point of the emotional expression to then say a word that gets to that point. It depends on who you are and where you're from.
And they're words that tend to be associated with things that we can't talk about anyway, because most of and I'm using the phrase vulgar language because that's ye olde hat. because that's what we talk about, vulgar language. Basically, we're talking about genitalia, we're talking about body parts, we're talking about processes around sex that are the taboo. And it's no wonder we're in the state of play around the entire globe, I suspect, because those are the words that are used venomously, they're used passionately, they're used in spaces. And when I used to do the relationship sex education, we used to go in and say, right, it was almost middle class in terms of, right, let them go in and say all of the swear words that they know in the very first session. And it does produce some very hilarious writings from certainly the 13, 14-year-olds, look at me being able to write something I've heard, and what one of the things that really brought me to the space of understanding where these kids were at is I'd be walking around looking at the acronyms going, I know what site you've been on to get that acronym. And they're like, what, how do you know that, miss? And the teachers didn't have a clue about what I was talking to the kids about, because I was looking going, don't say that one in public, because that's really not okay. That one will probably get you picked up by the collar and dragged down to the head teacher. But quite often we would be having conversations, and the lesson plan was originally designed so that children learned anatomical words and anatomical So what I used to do was kind of flip it around and say to the kids, so those words you've written on the piece of paper? And I said, and then we've got the word at the top that it actually means like penis or vagina. They were like, yeah. I said, do you think, which words do you think are okay to say? Well, of course, because it's a lesson, I would be getting what I call socially desirable answers. Oh, yes, I'd definitely say that word. I said, well, let me tell you, if you're in a relationship and you're just about to have sex, you wouldn't use this word, you'd use one of these. And then I'd point to kind of halfway down the list and say, you'd probably say this one, or maybe it'd be this one at the bottom. And then we talk about the context in which you can use those words, but then how you would look for permission or consent to use those words. But also, some people like this word, but they don't like that word. And how do you find out what kind of words are acceptable in the world we live in today? And you know what? A lot of this language has existed way before the internet, so I'm going to absolutely take off the table here that this is down to porn access. Because you know what? People use these words in the 1950s. People use these words in the 1900s. These are words that have been written into literature time and time and time again, especially about sexual contact, sexual behaviour.
It's part of culture. It's part of mindset. It's part of habits. Yes. It's all these things that culminate. And there's too many thick fucks that just point to one big giant sign that flashes red and go, bad, it's that thing. And it's just not.
Yeah, for example, they've said the word fuck. Oh, that must mean that they're watching pornography. And I'm like, no. Or maybe they just live with family that say the word fuck a lot.
Well, in the 80s, it was the telly, wasn't it? They used to be like, he's watching too much TV. And then it was video games. Like, playing too many video games. And now it's like, it's porn, or it's social media. They never address
they're to blame for everything. They're to blame for everything. Yes.
Except for myself. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's nuts. It is nuts. But it's interesting though at the same time. And I think, going into these issues now around, flip the conversation a little bit into social media and that escalation all the way to child sexual exploitation, right? It's just a very blanket label. Is all the very, very different variables, the context, the cultures, the upbringing, the traumas, the actions, the habits, all of it culminates into a case. A child is a victim, and horribly what comes after that.
Well, it's what can come after it for the length of the life of that person. So that's really where, now I'm not necessarily just talking here about child sexual exploitation or that particular issue. The reason I came up with cyber trauma was because when my children were in secondary school, so I've written about this, I've talked about this lots and lots of times. This is in the days of the flip phone or the dumb phone as it's now. I'll just give your kids a dumb phone. It'll be absolutely fine. Let me tell you, it wasn't fucking fine then. It isn't going to be fucking fine now, right? That's just because. I am not kidding. Yeah, give them a flip phone, because they'll be able to text and they'll be able to call. Yeah, well, where do you think the fucking perpetrators are, right?
Yeah,
and the reason I'm saying,
right?
The reason I say that is because often the people who are going to abuse or exploit children are people that they already know. That is a well-established claim in literature that is really, really prevalent. Yep. In the space of social media, we often have this idea of it's stranger danger and it's people that you don't know. Actually, often the child does know them, because they've got to know them online and they've already created something that we call a parasocial relationship. So for a lot of these children, they might be known to them, but they might be unknown to the parent. And again, what we've really got to think about is the long course of, if we then go back to a system where they can send each other URLs of a website, they are still going to be on spaces where those harms exist. We are not going to resolve the issue through dumb phones, let me tell you. Okay, because we haven't even started on VR yet, and just because that's the next thing that's going to get banned. Because actually, if you understand what's going to happen by taking social media or smartphones away from children, they're going to spend more time in the gaming environments, and those gaming environments are going to lead them into VR, and they're already using VR and in that space. So what we've actually just done is move them into a different location. But there we are, we've covered the problem because somebody wrote a book that was really scary.
Tick a box, move on.
Absolutely. Anyway. Right.
Another inquiry. How are we going to see this one?
So, rant not necessarily over, but rant over, back to the point in hand. So when my children were 11, 12, they'd got these flip phones that existed, they had cameras on them. My eldest came home and told me about a video that was being shared by the boys in the yard. It was of a torturous murder. There were videos that were shared on MSN chat, let me just say. Yeah, okay, just take us back a few years, right?
Yeah.
There were links and things were shared in these environments, and my children were exposed to things that I thought I'd protected them from. But they weren't included in the software that I was using at the time, to what we now call parental controls, because they didn't exist.
Or safety settings.
So I did what I thought was right, and I put all these particular settings on, and the computers we used in kind of the space downstairs where I could see it, especially when I was working, when I was cooking, whatever it was. But this happened outside of my house. This often happened when they went to somebody else's house who didn't have a tech-savvy parent, okay? Yeah. So this is the thing that we need to be thinking about. We can do everything to protect our castle, but actually everybody else has a castle. So unless we're having conversations with people about the portcullis and the drawbridge and, whether they've got knights at the helm, it leads us into a place where they were exposed to something and it still has an effect on them today. They can still recall that material. It still causes the same kind of biological feeling. And yet, this is 15 years down the line. So I'm going to give everybody an experience of this right now. I'm going to take you back to something just by a sound that will probably get an image into your head. Are you ready? Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Shockwave.
Okay, the worst horror movie of all time ever.
Yeah, it was shit. I didn't get the excitement as a kid. I was there and I thought, this is like watching the little Ewoks take down the Death Star. It didn't make any sense. It's just a little hobbit.
I know you see that bit, but yeah. Let's not even get into let's not even get into that. My God,
hobbits, man. Anyway, okay, keep going.
Right. So for those that are just having a Jaws moment right now, okay, shake yourself off, stand up, move your arms, breathe differently, do something, because not everybody will have had the comedy type. What I was trying to get at there, okay? But here's the thing: all I did was make a noise, and I don't know. For me, it's many years. For you, it might be 15 years. For somebody in their 50s or 60s, it might take them back 25 or 30 years. That's a film that most of us watched as a kid.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now, most of us, even in the United Kingdom, where we know there are no sharks, will only go so far into the water. And if a piece of seaweed touches them, they're out of that water faster than you can. Do you know how that movie has done that to so many people is unreal?
Yeah, it's an interesting, because at a mass scale, it justified the killing of sharks. And now their numbers have dropped, and they're like, oh my god, we need to conserve the sharks. Turns out they don't actually kill that many people a year. Let's do a campaign on it. Let's raise awareness around it. There's actually shark fin soup. That's immoral. How could you do that?
And barbaric practice it anyway.
Yeah, no, it's another rabbit hole.
Yeah. So the point that I'm making here, right, is if we only watched a film, right, and it had that impact, and we knew it wasn't. We absolutely knew we were watching a film because it was, cinema. Maybe we were watching at home with our parents. It depends on when you went to see it.
Big grey TV with a giant back on this big. Oh, I love that thing.
See, look how quickly you were just back in your childhood, having a recollection of the
table.
This is my point. All of those instances were TVs that were generally X amount of feet away from it. Okay, we didn't stand in front of the television because we used to get shouted at and told us eyes would go square. But actually, if you think, where we sit in front of our devices, how we hold our devices, it taps into a particular type of biological process, right? So if you want to know more about this, I actually have some free training on YouTube, which I uploaded this weekend so that people can go and in 28 minutes understand it in depth.
Okay.
But essentially,
what's it called?
It's probably labelled as cyber trauma training. I can't remember what I named it. Something like that. It's on my.
I can clip this and I can put it in the bio so people can just click the link and it goes.
Okay, I will send you the link to it later because it needs a thumbnail putting on it this afternoon, evening, or whatever. I just uploaded it yesterday because I'd done the training. Mm-hmm. And again, what happens is when I go out doing training with people, the PDF gets sent out to people, and of course, it hasn't got the videos and it hasn't got the. So I've effectively created it so people can understand a bit more. Now, for the therapists and people who want to understand the psychology, they will probably do the first 10 minutes. For everybody else, they'll just jump forward to the point that. Anyway, so in terms of cyber trauma, these children that have existed since the internet, i.e. the 27 and 28-year-old, people of your age, Adam, right, who have grown up, the lexicon around that group in terms of you're all natives, digital natives, whatever that means. Fucking useless terms. But they're the ones that they exist. Okay? Because let me tell you, people from Silicon Valley, and this annoys me, Adam, because I am a native of this space in terms of I understand the language, I work in it, I've embraced it since I was little, and I don't understand why this digital native only began with the internet, because you know what, I grew up with computers.
Because people are full of shit, and they're always going to have a label and something special. It's really annoying.
Yeah. I'm a digital native, right? But I get called a digital immigrant by the people because of the age group I'm classified as, right? What is that anyway?
What the fuck is that?
It's a really it's another pejorative term, isn't it? You're an immigrant of what? Technology, right? Anyway,
what? Do kids use that term, or is it?
It's often more in academia, more at training, more on downloadable, parent training.
Yeah, because
your children are digital immigrant. Your children are digital natives, and you're a digital immigrant. And I'm like, how disrespectful! Because some of the parents are like 25, 26, and 27.
See, not all academics piss me off, but there's a fair amount of them that are just so full of horse shit, and their egos, their attitudes are so. What's the word I'm looking for? They're so malign and pretentious, where they just look down on everyone around them. It's like one thing that bothers me. Sorry, I'm going off a little tangent here. I spoke to this commercial director in an institute recently. She's fantastic. Very, very, very switched on. They do some amazing stuff with technology. You have no idea what they're doing. It is brilliant. Super scary in the wrong hands, but then again, guns don't kill people. People kill people.
That should be a song, that.
What? Guns don't kill people.
Guns don't kill people. People do. Oh, yeah.
But so we were talking and she was discussing, I said, it'd be great to work with the X university and X commercial partner on this with you guys to develop this thing. And she was like, yeah, love to, but can we remove the academia part? I was like, I mean, I hate academia, so okay. Just because of the bureaucracy and the politics behind it. It's such a waste of time. Really is a waste of time. And I was like, how come? She goes, there is so much research that's being funded billions of dollars of research being funded, done, completed, and they won't release the information, they won't release the data, we can't commercialize the data because the academic lead or academic participants just want it for their own name to go on a frickin' piece of paper so they can get a promotion or go on an ego trip and get awards and brag about it. So they're stealing, going back to what we discussed earlier on, they're stealing all of that knowledge and all of that information to stroke their own asses because they really like the feeling of it. And it just really bothers me because it should be like, it should just, if you're an academic and your profession is knowledge and building knowledge and discovering things and research things and then sharing that to students and sharing that to public for the public benefit, why the fuck are you doing the opposite? It really irritates me. Oh, anyway.
Because sometimes it's about, and I talked about this in the Yellow Book, this is happening in this digital space a lot at the moment, and quite often it's almost, so I'm going to use a TA term here, we have something that we call a driver of behaviour, and one of them is called being perfect. And if I'm perfect, then you'll love me, Daddy, won't you? You'll love me, Mummy. If I'm really, now that Mummy or Daddy might be the institution, it might be the world of academia, it might be, you know, and somebody with doctor in front of their name is probably not as prestigious as somebody who's a professor or a dean or somebody who, let me tell you, when I first went to do my PhD many years ago, I was chasing it for the wrong reasons. The reason I'm going to explain that my PhD at the minute is being done because the piece of research needs doing about young children, because I have the privilege of being able to talk to the small ones, right? And it needs doing because we quite often, especially in the academic world, and this is why I write the books, because there's a lot about, oh, the kids are doing this, the kids are doing that. And I'm like, no, they're fucking not. It's not what they're telling me in practice. It's not what I'm dealing with. So got a little bit ranty, put an application in and said, can I do this? Can I actually study this? And can I bring out what the children actually say? You know, not the ones who can articulate themselves when they're 12 or 13 and give you the answers that you want, or tell you, you know, that they're representing the entire selection of children in the United Kingdom, but are not. Because generally a lot of the children who end up in these environments are not in the looked after system. They're not NEET, they're not, which is not in employment, educational training. They're not generally children who lack skills of being able to communicate. And we often go, so this is a representative sample, if you like. And pretty much I've found that that's why I went to do the PhD. It's got nothing to do with me having that title to then roll around and tell everybody. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am going to have it placed on my whatever I do, share, bio, whatever it is, because I've fucking worked hard for it. But at the same time, it's not there with which to whip people, because I am not an expert of everything. I am an expert of that particular study. That's it. That's all a PhD is. I am an expert of the thing that I have studied this one time. Doesn't mean that I know it in future, but I am a meta thinker, not the company, meta thinker. And often I say that I'm like a social commentator. I watch human behaviour overall, and I spend a lot of time watching behaviour that's in my clinic with the explanations and how I see that on social media with lots of other people.
See, that makes sense. And I think this draws back to the whole personal development thing when you said about the whole, like, is that right, Daddy, sort of thing. Never thought that word coming out of my mouth. Is because they're not. There's that ego chase. There's the I'm better chase in academia. And it's like it's like the rat race, isn't it? It's everywhere, and you have it where people just haven't worked on themselves and they've pursued the career goals, and it's all about that, and they've just put their name on everything. And so I find this with numbers on social media. Somebody said to me, so I've had a kid like, so how many followers have you got? And I said, well, it depends. She was like, what do you mean? I said, well, it depends on how many people fall out with me, because if they fall out with me, they stop following me. Yeah. If they like me, they follow me. If they like me, they share it. I said, so it fluctuates, and really, I don't know who those people are. It might be a little bit of an arbitrary number, because maybe I did one piece of content that was really good, and maybe those people now follow me, and then I say something that pisses them off, and they go, right, unfollow. Fine. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. and I'm going to go back to that Gary Vaynerchuk thing, right? Wherever I am in terms of numbers that follow me, it isn't about the numbers that follow me. It's about even just this conversation that we're having here today. How many people can I help that are outside of that remit of the 20 people maximum that I could see in a week? Because that's only 20 children and only 20 families, or only 20 clients, should I say, and their families that get the kind of ripple effect from what I'm doing in the therapy room. By teaching, by writing books, by doing social media, I get to talk to people where, you know what, maybe they have a moment where they think, Cath is not professing to be this person who gets it right all the time. Let me tell you, I have to say sorry so often to my kids and friends where I've interjected with something that was an opinion that was probably uncalled for, where I've advised on something, where they've asked me for some advice and I've told them no because I'm not being a therapist, I'm their friend, where, I don't know, where I've reacted, and quite often, it is usually something along the lines of, to my kids who are grown-ups, and they say something and I might go, oh, for fuck's sake, because and then I'm like, sorry, that's my own shit getting in the way, and actually I needed to just put that down to one side, and I didn't do that very well, and what?
It's fine. I mean, people do it all the time. You've got to have a bit of patience with each other. It's, that's perfectly normal. I mean, like I said, I look after my dad a lot. He's got some illnesses, and I sometimes I get snippy. Sometimes I do things wrong, and I hate myself for it. I really bother myself about it. But then, most of the time he's really thankful for what I do, and I'm like, well, it's not a big deal. You're my dad. I'd do it for you anyway. Who the fuck wouldn't? And if I have other people who don't do those things, and well, that's down to them, and it can be a prick. But you're only human. It doesn't. It's not the end of the bloody world, is it? To be honest. If you consistently
there is something about, I am very lucky in my profession to have the process that's required, where I must, it's not a choice, it's obligatory, I must be in supervision. I must also use therapy where, and I think if people use therapy for a place to go, I didn't get that right, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. But actually, here's what's going on for me at the moment. Here's why, I'm under a lot of pressure at the moment, or I've got this to do, or I've got that to do. I'm well aware that because I'm on a very tight deadline for the book I'm doing at the moment, I've got certain things that I have absolutely taken out of my calendar because I know I do not have the capacity to emotionally regulate in those spaces. Okay.
That's fair enough.
And it might be that they are, let's all get together and have a meal and let's go out party. I am not in a space to party because what will be going on in my head is I need to get back and I need to finish the writing and I need to get back, which means I'm likely to be curt. Anyway, I'm done. Right, bye. And people are like, what's wrong with her? Do you know what? I'd rather not get myself into that space.
That's fair enough. And that's just wisdom, isn't it? Through experience and self-analysis, you've understood that this is the way you're probably going to interact in a certain situation, and you figure to spare them and spare yourself, depending on, in this context, the characters and this is the way they may behave. You then, you've understood that, and then you've changed how the behaviours, you've changed the circumstances so the behaviour doesn't occur.
Yeah, I've got literally a month to get this manuscript in, so I know within the next month the pressure is on me to do and deliver what I've contracted to deliver, which means I do not have the capacity for it's not time off, because actually I do give myself time off because I know I need the self-care.
Good.
But it's more about large numbers of interaction. I know that right now we're heading towards the Christmas period, so what generally happens is people start doing that, we should meet up, maybe not in November, maybe not in December, maybe not in whatever month it might be. I actually know that at this point in time we're heading towards, there's a bonfire night, there's Halloween, there's
now I'm thinking the same damn thing now.
So it's not that I will behave like that in those situations, Adam, it's if I fall behind on my schedule, because that's the thing that I like to stick to in terms of, like I said to you, I sit down and I perform to the point of today I've got to get this done. I once didn't do this with one of the book manuscripts, and I was effectively a week behind. And I found myself stressing. But not only did I stress because, oh my goodness, I'm late, a little bit like the little white rabbit running around like, I'm late. But also, my inner voice takes me back into what I call, not what I call, but what's called the script. And this is the script of my early childhood. This is the script of the words that I will say to myself when I'm behind on something. And I'm not very kind to myself in those moments. So here's the thing. That wisdom that you're talking about is, whilst I totally understand not to be mean to myself, oh boy, that little idiosyncratic devil on the shoulder, so to speak, what we call the critical parent ego state. She's more than happy to rock up and let me know how I'm failing, or how being late is means this, or what people will and it's like that's when she's got the megaphone. So you know what? I just turn the volume down by taking certain actions, certain behaviours to reduce that so that I can manage what it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, see, that's yeah. I get the same thing. I mean, I was in hospital the other week. It was just long, and it put me behind like by a week, and I'm still playing catch up because I spend like 5 different plates a week. Like that's kind of what I do, and it's. I enjoy it because it enables me to then hire people to do what they do because they're brilliant at it and I'm not, and then that enables me to get better things and help more people, and then that's just cycling effect. It's fantastic, and also I feel good because I'm succeeding at stuff. But boy, I'm behind, and you know, it then I get that in a. It's not so much an inner monologue. I've tackled that. It's the feeling I get. It's the inner feeling of, I'd say, fear and anticipation. It's a horrible feeling of angst, and it's So
what you're doing there, I'm going to give you the word actually, is it's not fear, it's shame, but the fear is about the shame that you will feel in the future.
Yeah,
so this is something that's called a shame containment theory. My friends come up with this, and what she talks about is to keep shame contained, we will move into places where we carry out certain behaviours of right? But what you were alluding to there is the feeling, which is probably shame, is I'm behind, therefore, and the thinking will be part of it. But when you're paying attention to the feeling, what you're trying to do is prevent the shame in the future. That's what anxiety is. That's what fear really is it's about, I have already detected in the future. Your brain is very good at being a time machine. If I don't, then and what you're getting in touch with is the feeling about the future, and potentially feelings that are similar from the past, which in TA terminology we call rubber banding. You are rubber banded back to events that were in the past that present now, that you then worry about in terms of the future, and your brain constantly time travels.
Oh, and you get stuck.
Yes.
Oh, it's such a horrible freaking feeling. This is really helpful.
That's the one that cripples a lot of people.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? It really screws you. Yeah. This is really insightful. Thank you. Shit. This helps.
Yeah. So with a lot. Yeah.
Torture. It's inner torture.
And we don't talk about shame because what we tend to do is go, no. Well, I'm fearing because shame is a little bit like a seed. It thrives in the darkness.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Yeah, and then is trepidation the right word? Can you define it for me? Because I feel words. I don't tend to know what they mean.
So trepidation would be, I have a sense of impending doom or sense of impending.
I live in a constant state of trepidation. Yeah, I hate that. Yeah. Oh,
but the doom is, and if I take you back to shame is a feeling that we feel when we're little, and it's usually evoked by noises and facial cues. Okay, and that starts going into attachment theory, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds in this space, but certainly it's a lack of tolerance by the parent to something that the child is expressing.
Yeah. Which then, negatively impacts the behaviour, which means the child's not going to do it again, and they behave a different way.
Yeah, and then that feeling is, I am okay as long as I don't do that, or as long as I don't say that, and as long as I don't be that. And this is why, if we go, look at this, we've circled all the way back round to trauma. Isn't this lovely, right? This is why people tend to talk about it, that, then, the thing, the event, the incident, because even shame does not allow us to name often what the thing is or was when that thing happened.
God, shit. This is such a good conversation. I feel like I could keep this going for ages. Oh, damn. Okay. That's not me hinting at ending it, by the way. I've got another 29 minutes into my meeting, so I'm okay for 20.
Well, I'll tell you what we will have to do is make sure that we finish before then, because both you and I have meetings, and I don't want the shame of trying to think, in 15 minutes time, I'm going to have to go to the toilet or whatever, because that'll be a thing that'll happen. I've drunk nearly a whole bottle of water. I am well aware how much.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I've drank a coffee and almost an entire pint of water as well. And I've also, my missus is down visiting, and she's in a bloody hotel room right now, and I'm not seeing her, so I also feel like crap. So yeah, not all week, just today. It's been a busy day. And
you know what? Actually, and again, I'm not doing therapy, but here's the thing: you're making an assumption that she is not lolling about. You know what I mean? Loving the fact that nobody is telling her what to do. She can get a bath. She can watch television. She can read a book. She doesn't have to answer to. Isn't this interesting that you do you know what I mean?
That's fair. However, with contextual awareness, I know there is an air of anticipation in seeing me because she misses me and I miss her, and we're not seeing each other at the moment. So I know there's an air of that. But yeah, she's probably like she's tried a Cornish pasty for the first time today, and I'm so proud of her. She loves it. Oh, she's from Turkey. She loves it.
Is that one of the old-fashioned, like, proper big Cornish pasty with the nice...
Oh, yes! Yeah. Because I try and have them every day because I love them so much. Like a large traditional steak pasty from Niles Bakery. Yeah, but she tried it today. She loved it. And I was like, oh, yeah, we can get them delivered to Edinburgh. She was like, oh, this is dangerous. But she's...
And what delights have you tried up in Edinburgh, then, that are not down in the southwest?
Haggis with swede and mashed potato, bit of gravy on it. Oh, it's so good. And then you've got obviously good Scotch whiskey. You've got cigar pairings with it. Oh, I love cigars. And lots of Highland booze that I actually can't remember, which makes sense because it was really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what a beautiful city in terms of, for both of you, I guess, in terms of. I mean, Edinburgh is just stunning to look at, but it's very busy, and I suspect down in the south, it's not that.
That's what. Yeah. Cornwall's very contrasting. For me, I went to Edinburgh for the first time. Oh, screw it. I went to Edinburgh. The clouds are taken away in a minute. I went to Edinburgh for the first time, like about a month ago, and I loved it. I didn't realise the city could look so beautiful and clean and artistic in the UK, and that's just because I never went. I mean, I went to Glasgow, and that was beautiful as well. I find parts of Manchester beautiful, but I have a big gripe about architecture, and I hate modern architecture so much. It's so soulless, it's ugly, it's lifeless. You look at a building, and you think, there's just nothing to it. But then you look at something like Edinburgh, and you're like, wow, this is gorgeous. And then you feel how happy people feel, and then there's just a general feeling of like, this is nice to be here.
It is. For those that haven't been, it's a little bit like when I guess when you go around Europe and places like that there are breathtaking. And I'm going to say just like monuments in terms of whether it's a structure, a building, a piece of art, or people put their time. Yeah. And sometimes not so good. I like that, soulless in terms of
soulless is the word, because there's just no love put into it. It's either some Art Deco bullshit that some tit is put together and went, oh, look at this, it's bougie. Or it's just something that's just placid and plain. Like, for instance, a lot of the new builds they're building down the Cornwall at the minute, they're building so much housing, it's destroying the countryside. Like, quite literally, it's killing it. And this is a big tourist area. This place relies on tourism. And in Cornwall in particular, or Kernow, has a very rich history of its own culture. They were very isolated in the past. I know we're going way off topic here now, but yeah, very isolated in the past. And the Anglo-Saxons from the east were the ones that came in and they butchered them. And literally just butchered them. The West completely. And they were the native Britons and Celts, and they were just taken aback. And then they got integrated, and they weren't really governed as much until about the 1800s from London. And then they became part of England, right, basically. But they always have like their own languages potted around. Now, the original Cornish language like died out 400 years ago, and now it's been kind of potted back together. It's not fully correct, but it's as best they're going to get. But now they're exporting lots and lots of people from, they're either migrants from other countries, people from destitute areas, drug addicts, stuff like that, export them down to Cornwall, and it's influencing the culture massively. Now, they're very isolationist culture anyway. They don't like, the term is Emmett, is anyone who's from anywhere aside from this county. Don't like it. Typically and historically don't like it. And I get it, because culture is a fabric, and when the fabric gets too many needles woven into it, it tears apart. Oh, that's a lovely analogy. And that's very much happening down here. And it's, you can tell by all the new builds they're doing, sorry, going back to architecture, is that they're very basic. They've shrank the windows for green effect, like to help the environment, but there's not enough light coming in, so people get naturally depressed. The floors are plasterboard, light wood, cheap. The walls are put together in small box rooms, plasterboard. The insulation shit. The walls crack on the outside as the houses settle on clay over 10 years. It's a mess. And there should be complete shame about it. But unfortunately, there really isn't. And it's everywhere. It's not just Cornwall, it's everywhere. But Edinburgh is one of those special places where it's beautiful. And luckily, it's been kept intact, mostly. Like, I'd say 80% of it, 90% of it is still there. And you can enjoy it for the time it's there. So bright. Which is
why, if we go back to that gratitude thing earlier, those moments that you were talking about, there might not be as many deers, trees, spaces, in years to come. And of course, when you look at certainly towns and architecture and it goes backwards, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you're watching at the moment. This is totally off topic. I've loved the fact that I've just gone to this in my head, right? Are you watching the Graham Hancock stuff on Netflix at all?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
It's fascinating in terms of he is in search of an ancient lost civilization, and some of the things that he finds.
I love him. Yes, he's amazing. So amazing.
To the point that one of the episodes of the newest series, I was just thinking, how many people just writ large go to places and spaces and don't necessarily know how many people have been there before, and how many of us, and there was one woman talking about she cried when she put her hands in the footprint of a Mexican child, or I think it's a Mexican child. Yeah, wow. But that's the thing about the geography. I mean, gosh, I know loads of kids don't like geography, but I'm like, I used to hate geography at school, but gee, wow.
It's not just like there's so many. That's the thing. There's so many maps. It's like, for instance, our general map of the world is very incorrect. The continents are not the right sizes. It's just not correct. But it's very interesting. I mean, there's one I found the other day. It was known as Baia. I might be pronouncing it wrong. It's Baia. The ancient Las Vegas was described as a vortex of luxury and a harbour of vice by Seneca. It was inhabited by, they had estates on it in 100 BC by Pompey, Caesar, Nero, Hadrian, all had residences there. Natural architecture, very beautiful, designed. It was designed for the super rich at the time to go there, party, have fun. And you just think, never knew. And there's so much culture, and so I've got to get this light on, man. There's so much culture and everything that's just completely wasted and not taught in mainstream history. I mean, we look at world history and it's basically North America, Europe, bit of Africa, bit of the East, and Australia. And that's world history. It's like, no, man, come on, there's so much more. And
yeah,
these, I know Graham Hancock went on about these sunken islands, which we know with sea levels rising now, we know that tends to happen coming out of an ice age. And these islands on these maps, they're described with stone walls, how they used to describe, like, say, they'd have a dragon on Wales and a unicorn on Scotland, and they'd have stone walls on this island, and then they'd find the island underwater with stone walls on it. So then it's went underwater. It's nuts. But yeah, there's so much that's just not taught and disrespected and forgotten, and I do really appreciate it. I genuinely do, because there's just so much, and it's so fascinating.
Well, there's the element of standing on the shoulders of giants previously, and again, we're back to knowledge, which is, by the way, one of my favourite things to do, if you haven't noticed, is kind of go, and we were talking about that earlier, and we've circled back on that, and we're now, because actually we're not repeating ourselves, we are integrating, assimilating. This is all sounding a little bit Piagetian, but what we're doing is kind of pattern recognition and putting things together that help us understand the world, so that our articulation of it in the future means that we can stand on the shoulders of giants, which also includes the way that we develop as human beings in terms of technology and the development of even buildings. There we are. Succinctly done. Full stop. Done. This is why taking a book takes me so bloody long, because I'm like, oh, actually, I've just thought I could put. Never mind.
We're gonna have to we're gonna have to do another one of these. This was a really.
Do you know what? Well, yes, because we didn't even cover what we said we were going to start talking about. We haven't gone anywhere.
Yes. Yeah, but we've covered so many things that they're the foundational bricks of your perspective and how you live your life in society. That, to be honest, we don't need to dive into session so much. We can do that later or speak to someone else about it, because I'd say they're foundational thoughts and memories that you should have in your life to then inform how you form your opinion going forward. So I think we haven't wasted the session or discounted what we were going to discuss. They're all very important things, but I think, we're discussing things that are rarely discussed that people may find valuable. And if they don't, well, that's okay too.
And there's no such thing as wasted time, because actually there is always something to gain from. Yeah. Now, this is probably me recalling something that used to happen when, so it doesn't necessarily happen as much now, but this is definitely something that happened in the army when you had to go and do a stag, right? So that's like during being on exercise, or when you were in a camp, one of the things you have to do is you have to maintain the security of the rest of the soldiers, or if you're in other military forces, it would be them. And many times I would be sitting there from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock in the morning, and it might be my stag on the gate or my stag on perimeter, whatever it was. There's no such thing as wasted time, because it's 2 hours of me staring into the dark, waiting for the deers or the rabbits or said enemy, and all you can do is think. So even when people are listening to this, I would say, just take from it what you want. And there's no such thing as wasted time, because in the time that you have, there might be one thing that sits with you now, and a little bit like that seed that I talked about earlier, it might need time to grow. You might not develop the learning from it just yet, and somebody else says something later on in a week, in a year, and it cracks the seed open, and suddenly now your level of understanding has changed.
Yeah, I've had that. Yeah, it happens a lot, and I think you're completely correct. And even just reflecting on a moment where you think you've wasted time by being miserable in an afterthought, then changes your perspective and helps you personally develop into something else. So the amount of times I think I've wasted time and I haven't. I've just needed a rest, or I've just needed to maybe do something stupid in order to then be smarter later. You don't know.
One of the things. So I've mentioned it a couple of times in terms of the procrastination monster. So that's Tim Urban's Wait But Why. So he's got it's one of the biggest TED Talks going, actually. But I would certainly say there is always a reason why you're doing something. And in the early days of when I was first putting the book together, the very first book, I would find myself at what I called that drawer. And we've all got one of those that drawers. And some people call it a trinket drawer, and other people call it the drawer of whatever chaos or. But everybody has a drawer in their house with the elastic bands and the batteries and the pens and the maybe even, I don't know, old phones, stamps, you name it. And if I found myself tidying that drawer, I used to start laughing, because I was like, oh, okay, what's going on? Well, I'm procrastinating, I'm avoiding. Why am I doing that? Okay, that ties into because I don't think I'm good enough to write this particular section of the book, or maybe I haven't done enough research around it, or maybe I'm just not good enough at all. Maybe this is my fear voice. And then it would be, okay, tidy up the drawer. Because here's the thing, and it's an activity people can engage in. Sometimes by tidying our external environment, it puts our thoughts and thinking process into the same kind of space. So tidy your desktop, and that might be the one on the computer as well as your desk in front of you. It might be, to quote Jordan Peterson, tidy your bedroom first.
I love Jordan Peterson. Get your own house in order before you complain about everyone else's. I like that one the most.
Now that's a lesson for us all.
Yeah, because we're all guilty of doing it. I do it sometimes. I shouldn't. I'm like, oh crap, I've got other things to do.
And sometimes we don't always recognise that our house isn't in order. Now that's the one of self-reflection, which is why I like people in glass houses should sometimes just take a look at their reflection, never mind about throw stones.
This is good. This is a good one. Yeah, we're gonna have to do another one of these. I'm gonna call it there. We can always stay on the thing. I'll just hit the stop button, but I'll call it there. But damn, thank you so much for coming on. Honestly,
you're welcome.
I've been